types of sports with shoot and tour. Football discussion on the internet.
Football discussion on the internet. Welcome everybody to the program. It is both types of sports. Try to be a shot in the ear, shake it up. I'm your host with the most, the Shootster, broadcasting live from the Fortress of Solid Dudes. Thank you so much for being a part of the program today. Twice a week, we are here. Make sure you hit the like button. And if you haven't already, head on over to iTunes and Spotify. Click subscribe on both types of sports. It is free, FREE. And we greatly appreciate that. If you take the time to leave a 5-star review, well, then I won't tell you to suck it from the back. We are brought to you by Dream Stay Getaways, like we are each and every day when you're booking your Florida theme park vacation. Avoid the fees. Book these awesome houses directly. There is a crawl at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can check that link, dreamstaygetaways.us. Beautiful homes on resorts, going to Universal, going to Disney, just looking to get out of the cold. I got a taste of that East Coast cold for the first time of the season last night. It's usually not late November before we start thinking about fucking how cold it is around here. But yeah, if you are getting out of all of it this winter, avoid the fees. Book the houses directly. Verbo, Airbnb. I'm happy they exist, but good Lord, the fees are outrageous. Dreamstaygetaways.us. You can see their beautiful homes by going to the site. Go to the site. All right, very good. Best in the business as far as I'm concerned. He's not going to have to worry about the win or lose this year as he is in the beautiful state, the tip of the motherfucking spear, as I call Texas and Tejas. The great Sean Salisbury joins us on the program. Now, Sal's, always a pleasure and an honor, sir. How are you doing today?
Good, man. I'm doing awesome. We're getting that mid-60s weather here today, 65. So after I'm done with you, I'm going to go hit some balls.
Man, break out the Sherpa-lined parka. I know people, my dad lives in Florida. When it dips down into the 60s, they don't handle it well down there.
One of those, you put in a little bit of like a little a vest, one of those golf vests on.
Sure.
Torso, but I'm good, man. Life's good here. How about you?
Little downlining. It's fantastic, man. The only thing that stinks, Al, is I just read this. And I don't know who makes the schedule or what we need to flex, but the Cleveland Browns now have 4 primetime games over the next 6 weekends, starting tonight with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me start there. One of the things I lamented, we did our show Monday, Sal's, and I really, one of the things I like about getting away from sports talk radio, I know you're still killing it in that world, is like you got to talk Lakers, you got to talk Yankees, you got to talk Cowboys. And there was so much great shit that happened during the NFL week, and we opened up with the Jets and the Cowboys like we always do because the drama's there. Let me open up with Pittsburgh. That's a huge win over the Ravens. How valuable is it that if you're in a tightly contested game against a really talented division rival like Baltimore, Mike Tomlin ain't losing those games? What are the 8 out of the last 9? They've all been decided by 3 points or less. Like, are the Steelers for you a top 3 team in the AFC? Are they a top 3 team in the league? Where do they slot in for you right now?
It's so funny you mentioned this. I was talking on saying if you had money, $25,000 that you were just going to bet and you could distribute it over the teams where we sit now, not what you think they're going to look like in January, but today. And put it out there. It's like, okay, who would you have at the top of the list? And for me, Detroit's the best team in football. Number 1 in offense, top 5 in defense. Aggressive play caller. They respond to Dan Campbell. Now, obviously, looking forward, like I said, I wouldn't do in January. Are they good enough? If they get home field advantage, you playing in their place. What if they have to go on the road to Philly? That stuff we deal with. I'm just talking about today. My investment would start with Detroit. Buffalo has impressed me, and I thought they would struggle more this year. Josh Allen's, if he's not the MVP, he's not third. And then I had Pittsburgh in that Kansas City-Pittsburgh, the like a 3-4-5 where Kansas City, Pittsburgh belongs. Now, my only reservation about Pittsburgh, only one, are they explosive enough on offense if they run into a team that hangs 28 on them, right? Like if they run into Kansas City or a team that can explode against. Now, I don't know if a team can score much on them, but Mike Tomlin factor matters. Russ Wilson's rejuvenated. Can he carry him if they're having one of those days where they're not running it well? But they play defense. There's always buy-in. They beat you up even no matter how good you are offensively. And if they just protect the football, they look like old school football. They look like how you won in the 80s or 90s as long as Russ plays like this and doesn't get skittish and stays this course, Mike Tomlin validated making the decision to go to him, and this team has responded. I don't know how anybody can question Mike Tomlin as a head football coach, regardless of, he doesn't have 3 or 4 Super Bowl wins. Nobody adjusts to players as good as him. Maybe Andy Reid. I got Pittsburgh at 3 right now, and I got them ahead of Baltimore and ahead of Kansas City. And we're going to find them on Christmas Day hosting the Chiefs. So today, I think this team is not only dangerous, I think they can win a Super Bowl, play in February, old school style. At least I know when Russ Wilson gets in the playoffs in the past, the guy knows how to elevate then. And he's gotten better over the last couple of years. And whether it's the way that they're calling plays or the way that just when Mike Tomlin gets a hold of you, you play different. I love they're physical enough at the run game with Najee Harris. So I think Pittsburgh's real, and they know how to win ugly games, and I think they can prevent you from playing pretty football against them. I love them.
Sal, I know you're a bit of an old soul, and so am I. And that I still like football coaches that look like football players on the sidelines. No disrespect to Mike McDaniel or LaFleur or any of these guys, but a couple of things I like about the Steelers: they win close games, they kick field goals. I mean, the analytics thing drives me insane. Where we time and time again we get to the end of a game and it's like, okay, process over results. I get it, but if you would have kicked the extra point there, you win the game, and you didn't, so you don't. They take the points. They hold serve at home. Their best player on the field is the defensive guy. TJ Watt owns Lamar Jackson, who might be the best football player in the league. They check so many boxes, Sal, of stuff that just warms my cockles as far as the way a football team goes about their business. It makes them very easy to think that if they get into a tough spot, they're going to pull through because of those things.
I 100% agree. They don't have to win pretty. And where they don't have to be flashy and hang 40 on you. I love team. Now, listen, there comes a point in time you say, that's why I said, how would you respond if you're Pittsburgh, if all of a sudden Kansas City throws, even though Kansas City's offense is not in the category of a few others. They've got Mahomes and Kelsey, I get it, but overall the parts are better than the sum. And when you have Andy Reid, you always got a chance. But how will they respond, Pittsburgh, if you give up 4 touchdowns? I think they'll respond in kind just fine, thank you, because I think they know how to win those kind of games. But if it's close and low scoring, give me the Steelers over anybody in football. Now they may not be the best team, but there's something about them that it feels like they love that down and dirty stuff, man. They love the old soul football. Yet, they've got some guys like Pickens that can go, they can do some things, but we don't look at them as a flashy team. I look them at they're a body blow team. And I can tell you what body blows to football play. I'm just telling you that knocking a guy out, if you're in a heavyweight fight and a guy that the favorite gets hit with he swings and misses, and then a straight right from the opposing guy who's the underdog and knocks the heavyweight champion out. Right. We all say, oh, man, he landed a lucky punch. I want a rematch. Well, the one we don't want to rematch is when a team comes in there. And he may hit you in the face and stun you, but they hit you in the rib cage and in the gut time and time again. That takes your soul.
Yeah.
A shot to the face. Oh, okay, man, he stunned me. No, man, you can't beat me if we stand toe-to-toe. The Steelers will hit you in the gut and keep pounding you to the point where your soul, you throw up the towel and say, I've had enough. That's who they are. And I think it bodes well for January and February football. Now, if they get into a shootout, I'd take 8 teams over them. But they don't let you get into that situation very often. They are really damn good. And Mike Tomlin's a Hall of Famer if he walks away today. The guy is phenomenal. And he looks like a football player. Dan Campbell looks like a football player. Dan Quinn looks like a football player. Not saying it, but those guys who look like they just as soon fight you for their teammates as coach you, that's the kind of guy I like. Yet there's still the respect from player to coach, knowing that I'm not taking him for granted because he's one of us. And I think those 3 teams we just mentioned have that guy.
To your point, Stipe Miocic getting folded up with a body kick over the weekend by maybe the greatest to ever do it. The body shots are rough.
There you go, brother.
I'm glad you made the comparison with the Chiefs. And this is a point that I've been making all week. The Chiefs, that was the first time they'd allowed 28 points in a game since the Eagles in the Super Bowl, whatever that was, 30 straight games. Sal's, that defense has bailed out the Chiefs offense now for a Super Bowl for
2 years. Yeah.
I don't think that offense is good enough to bail out that defense, and I think they proved it against the Bills. Now maybe when they get Isaiah Pacheco back and some of these weapons are, DeAndre Hopkins is more integrated into the offense, that changes. But we're going on over a year now where the strength of this team is the defense. And if what you're talking about there, if they're in the postseason, you expect them to win. Well, what if they're down 18 points to a team like Buffalo or to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers? Is this a Chiefs offense that can bail out the defense, because they proved they couldn't this past Sunday?
Yeah, in a score where there's a big gap. I mean, anytime, listen, the equalizer is going to be number 15 and Andy Reid. You say, okay, that he always has the ability in one game to roll off 3 touchdown passes in a quarter because he's Patrick Mahomes.
Sure.
But I now, with Hardman and with the speed that they have, the kid from Texas. Why am
Worthy? Xavier Worthy.
Xavier Worthy. They've got tremendous, those two guys. But the overall weapons where you're like, whoa, we know who Kelsey is, but if that's the one guy I got to defend, I can double him and make him work a little hard. I just don't know why you give him a free run off the line of scrimmage. I'd make him play more physical at the line to get to his spot. But as long as you don't give up the big play, and they have actually gone about their business, and having Kareem Hunt's been really good for them. But I am with you. I'd take Buffalo's offense the way Allen's playing. I would take, I think the Texans' offense, when they got Nico Collins back and with Joe Mixon's all around better. The 49ers' weapons, even though they're 5-, I can go through Detroit. I actually think the Chiefs are, if you took Mahomes away, but if you did that with any team with a starting quarterback like him, but I don't think they're explosive on offense. I think if you get them the ball within a touchdown and a minute 30 to go, you got a real good chance of winning with Mahomes. But I don't think they can play the catch-up they're used to playing. And there is no doubt, I know when we say the strength of a team, you're saying it's not Andy Reid's play calling and Mahomes. On this team the last year and a half to 2 years, it's been Steve Spagnuolo's defense, pressure, physical, nasty, and getting after it. And when you give up a ton of points and somebody hits you for those like Buffalo did and your quarterback plays out well, you're in trouble right now with Kansas City. And when I say we're talking about a one-loss team in trouble, but they've kept it close enough that they've won a lot of games late and with drives late in the game where they've hung around, and then you put the ball in Mahomes' hand. But if you extend that lead and you've got a good defense, Pittsburgh ain't letting you come from 18 behind. Kansas City ain't beating them if they're down 2.5 touchdowns. They're just not. Yeah. They are not going to do it. And I'm not sure maybe Detroit can get back in it if you go 3 and out, because Detroit's defense is pretty good. But there is no doubt in my mind the best defensive coordinator, big game defensive coordinator, as well as Steve Spagnuolo. If they give up 3 or more touchdowns, I think this year Kansas City has trouble winning. Even though Kareem Hunt's been a great add to them and they've got team speed, they just don't feel as vertically explosive to me. They screen you and short pass you and go, and Mahomes makes plays off schedule. I don't think they can. Now, they may go 3-peat. I didn't think they were going to repeat. I have so much respect for them. But if you're talking about offense and defense, their offense, I'd take 8 to 10 teams that I can think of better offensively. It's just that Mahomes always lets you think that they got a chance.
He does, and I love the fact that the Bills played it differently this time around. Like, we know how they lost in that game, and they're like, no. The guy that's the best player on the field is going to have the ball in his hands, and what do you do on 4th down? He goes and he runs for a touchdown. I don't know if you saw the
defining moment for him this year,
right?
And he's not throwing the ball to the other team in the red zone like he did the last 2 years.
And without Coleman, without Dalton Kincaid, I know that was in Buffalo, and for them that's the regular season Super Bowl, but they're kind of going, I love going, we're a team. We're not a superstar. Like, the opposite of that is poor CeeDee Lamb. I mean, his back's got to be bowed with what's being put on him in Dallas. And whatever the exact opposite of that is, Sal's, it's the Buffalo Bills that have decided, no, it takes a village, and our village is going to go out there and maul your superstars. And that's why I like seeing Amari Cooper get these results. Like, it's a feel-good story there this year.
You know what? And it's not, and for them, the feel-good, it's fine and dandy, but they want to prove that the substance is there, and it is.
Yeah.
And you know what? They run around and hit you on defense. Excuse me. And what I love about it is going into this season, I don't know where you had them, Chad. I did not have them winning the division. I thought this was take a step back a little bit because they lost some weapons. Are they as good defensively without all those DBs? How are they going to be? And will you put more pressure on Josh Allen to where he's forced to try and throw the ball to places in the red zone, and that trend of turning it over in the red zone continues? Well, they looked at it the opposite. Well, what you just said. We're going to have a whole bunch of guys. Now we got our Superman at quarterback, but we can win other ways than just having him have to make every play, yet he can. And even though Lamar is probably the leading candidate, I'm going to tell you, man, Josh Allen even has taken his game to a whole nother level. And that's hard to do because I go back to when they played Kansas City in that game and he and Mahomes went back and forth. I thought Josh Allen's arrived, yet he's doing it. There's a blue-collar, tough guy mentality about him when that Buffalo fans, if they get home field advantage, they're able to find a way to get the play at home in the AFC.
Yeah.
Man, that's going to go a long way for them. But because some places I think are easier to play. Detroit would like to stay indoors, I'm sure. And Buffalo, Kansas City, and Pittsburgh, they're outdoor teams. But it's just so that fan base and the way they play and the way they're going, that's a blue-collar team with a very gifted, some skill position players and some players. And there'd be people across the country that can't name 8 guys on their team.
Sure.
Yet they keep winning, which validates your point.
Well, people want to say, too, I don't want to belabor the point on the Bills, but they're like, why would it be any different? Well, the Bills haven't been 9-2 since 1992. This is already a different season for them. And part of it is the Jets collapse, and part of it is the Dolphins not being what we thought it was going to be. But it's chip on the shoulder time. And I think that you see that in the physicality. And your point with Lamar's the best football player in the league, probably. And if he's not, it's the guy standing next to him in the backfield, and then I might even go to Saquon after that. But it ain't. It's the most valuable football player, Sal's. Mm-hmm. And how is that not Josh Allen after what we saw this past week?
Well, these last 6 weeks or 6 games will define who that guy is, the MVP. And we probably don't give enough respect to Jared Goff's run this year, what he's doing, and the 5 picks on national TV kind of slowed that down. But I agree with you. I'm those 2 guys. I mean, Lamar. Think about this real quick on Lamar. If he goes to the Super Bowl and wins it this year, let's just say for the hell of it, and he's the MVP again, he's a lock for the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
I mean, a lock, and he's 5 or 6 years into a career. I mean, it's really fascinating at what he's doing. And you know how we want to validate quarterbacks by they got to get a Super Bowl win, but he really is. And you're right about Allen. When we talk about, is it offensive player of the year is one thing, statistics, but most valuable to their team. And considering Baltimore added to their team this offseason, going in before they traded to Amari Cooper, did you really look at Buffalo's offense and say this team's better offensively than they've been in the past? And that answer is absolutely not, with no disrespect to Cook, who's good, and they've got good players. But you didn't think they made major offensive upgrades. I actually thought Josh Allen's, oh, man, they're even putting more burden on him. Well, in truth, they've got 3 or 4 guys doing yeoman's work and different guys that are making plays every week. So I would agree with you. If you told me Josh Allen was the MVP of the league right now, I would not argue with you. If you told me it was 3 weeks ago, Derrick Henry, I wouldn't argue with you. If you told me it's Lamar Jackson every week, no argument there. But I do believe the MVP is going to come out of Buffalo or Baltimore this year, depending on which guy it is.
It's at Sean Unfiltered on X. Highly suggest you give him a follow. Sal's, I'm glad you brought up Goff. You are a quarterback. You work with quarterbacks still to this day. The mental part, I can't imagine, other than pitcher in baseball or a golfer where you're kind of out there with yourself, the mental part of the game seems the quarterback is it's everybody else after that. To go out and throw 4 or 5 picks and then your coach, you win, first of all, you win. And then your coach comes out and says, my quarterback didn't play a bad game. I know that sounds crazy because of all the interceptions, but he actually played a good game. And then you follow that up with the following week. It's a Rex Grossman-like mentality, right? You go out there and fire a pick, and I don't care, I'm going deep the next time. But you also have to have the talent around you and the ability and the right kismet to make sure that you're not just making the same mistakes over and over again. But talk a little bit about Goff from a quarterback's perspective. This was a guy that was ballast. I mean, he was included in a deal because Stafford was the prize and he's going to go on to bigger and better things. And now Goff is playing at an MVP caliber level for, like you said, it's the best team in the league and it's not even close. And when they play a bad team, they dog walk them up and down the field. And nobody has anything to say about it. I mean, it's incredible stuff we're seeing out of the quarterback position in Detroit.
I think that's my favorite thing, other than getting impaired with Ben Johnson. That's my favorite thing about Jared Goff. You're the first pick. You go to the Rams, people question it. You struggle, early on. You get to a Super Bowl, but don't play well. And then all of a sudden they think, well, we got to replace him. In that offseason, they go get Stafford and they go to a Super Bowl, and you think, okay, man, it was a great deal for the Rams, even what they gave up because they got a Super Bowl. And then if you remember, and I could probably find that clip, or maybe Chad, you could along the way, you'll see. Remember when Dan Campbell stood up during that season and said, Jared Goff's got to play better.
Mhm.
Basically, we expect more from him. He's answered it. To me, the physical thing, he could always throw it. That wasn't it. And there were times when you wondered, is his personality, is his toughness fragile? I wondered it when they got rid of him because they wasted no time after that Super Bowl loss to a Super Bowl, and the next year he's gone, right? And so it's like, man, and I think we all got caught up in, well, Goff's not – he's now validating why he was the first pick of the draft. He is, and he's playing fantastic football. But to throw, I can tell you, there's a handful of guys I think about. It's that unconscious. You know how we all say, I don't give a rat's ass what anybody thinks. As a quarterback, it's one thing you throw 4 or 5 picks, and it's another thing where you're like, man, you start to squeeze the ball a little harder and aim it because you're thinking, I don't want to throw a 6th. It's the guy who's not afraid to throw the 6th interception. That is the guy that will get through that tread through. What's it, the song Going Through Hell? Keep on moving or keep on going, the country song. And he does that. And they still won that damn game. And so I think his teammates think he's the MVP in the league. And his mental toughness, I don't want to say shocked me, is my favorite thing about him. And now you get all these weapons and it's now if you're the Detroit Lions, as much as I love Stafford, you got a Super Bowl ring, you cannot say that the Rams got better of the deal now, even though they got the Super Bowl ring. I'm talking about quarterback for quarterback, and I think Stafford's a Hall of Famer. But right now you're looking at it saying, you know what? This trade's actually worked for us because we got some other players, and there is no glaring weakness. When Hutch got hurt, you think, well, can they? Well, they went out and traded for somebody, and they're still doing their thing, top 5 defense. And then you couple them with the best non-head coaching play caller. Sean Payton's got his, Andy Reid. Ben Johnson, and you mentioned they curb stomp teams that they're supposed to beat. And you know what's crazy? Ben Johnson doesn't care. They got 42 points. They're going to score 50. That's the way. They're aggressive. They're smart. But I love the mental toughness that Goff has shown, and that will bode well for them. It's not the physical skills. I know they're talented, and they're Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got a bunch of playmakers, 2 running backs that can start on a lot of teams, great team speed. It is their ability to say, oh, we're down 3 touchdowns. Oh, we sucked for a half. No problem. Our quarterback knows he can get it done. Doesn't think, and now he knows. His mental toughness has taken another step, and I'm not afraid of January if I'm Detroit fans with Jared Goff. I'm actually looking forward to it because I think that he can validate that trade even one step bigger. He's had a phenomenal run, but it's the perfect storm because he's got the best offensive coordinator in football. And I'm quite frankly not sure it's close right now.
Yeah, I think also the cliche to your point is Rocky Balboa. It's not how hard you can hit; it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And I think that completely embodies Goff. But how about they lose their best? I mean, Sal's Aiden Hutchinson might be their best football player.
He is.
You know?
Oh, it's not might. He is their best football player. And guess what? What Dan can? I mean, the cheesiest or the constant cliche of next man up. Well, they said, well, next man up, yeah, but we're also going to go trade for another guy to make sure our depth is right. And they can still win a Super Bowl without Hutch, which says something. And then you start to look around. Well, damn, is Amon-Ra St. Brown their best player? Is anybody quicker to the edge than Jahmyr Gibbs? Is anybody playing with more confidence even after 5 picks than Jared Goff? I mean, you start to run around and you say, oh, no wonder Detroit's really good. And they've got a coach that empowers his Aaron Glenn on one side and Ben Johnson on the other, and coaches them up. And there's a sense of, I don't believe in game-to-game momentum. I do believe in game-to-game confidence. And it takes a lot for a coach to look at his player and say he didn't play bad and he threw 5 picks. But they did find a way to make clutch plays against the Texans. And then I last week, Chad, in my betting world, I do a pregame show. My lock of the week was the 14-point spread that they were giving Jacksonville last week. After what I saw in the first half, I said, oh, even though they won against the Texans, Ben Johnson's going to have no pity. And it was a lock of the week for me. And that's a brisky and a double-digit lock of the week. And that was my lock of the week. And I told everybody, you go bet it regardless. And I said, by halftime, they'll have half their score. And they had 28 at halftime and curb stomped them. And it was an easy one for me because I know their mentality and the way they get after it.
I forgot which player it was. I think it was one of their DBs, and the reporter asked him in the locker room afterwards. He goes, "Why did you were running up the score?" And he goes, "No, if you come to Detroit and you're not playing to win, you're going to get your ass whipped." And that was no apologies. And I love that mindset.
Unlike some places where we don't want to keep scoring, hurt somebody's self-esteem because they're 8. The Detroit Lions don't give a shit about your self-esteem. They want to put their foot on your throat, and 40's just not quite enough. they create a big gap when it comes to, and I love a team that buries a team that they're supposed to. They don't play down to competition. They destroy you. And so that's a dangerous team. And I had them in August going to the Super Bowl. And I'll be honest with you, Chad, I didn't think they were going to be this good.
Yeah.
So I think, then there's some good NFC teams. AFC's deeper when it comes to top heavy. But I'm going to tell you, man, this NFC, the Super Bowl champ could come out of Philadelphia. It could actually come out of Detroit because both of them are really good. And it seems like they're playing really good football at the right time.
I'm coming up on it here with you, Sals. I don't want to keep you too long. The game that happened in your neck of the woods, kudos to the Houston Texans, 34-10 going in there. I know they ran it up late, but Cooper Rush threw for over 50 times. I mean, that was Cowboys. I'll give them credit. They weren't a homecoming opponent there. They at least punched back, but they're winless at home. Their shit falling out of the skies at the stadium. It's as bad as they can get. What I want to talk to you about is culturally. You've been in Houston for a while. First of all, first part of the question is Nico Collins is back. Joe Mixon scores 3 touchdowns. I think if people are still nervous about Houston and whether or not they can go in and win a playoff game and be a contender, look at the pieces they're getting back, the healthier team getting better, and the fact that, there's some potential there to make plays against anybody. But when they go on the road to Dallas, and they've got young, exciting players. And C.J. Stroud, God bless him, but he looks like he's about 15 years old when he takes off his helmet to me. That's relatable to young NFL fans. And they play an exciting brand of football with exciting players. Culturally, Dallas is this ogre, right? This 800-pound gorilla certainly in the nation, but I imagine they're in Texas as well. When Houston does that, and Dallas looks as dysfunctional as they do, and Houston's a playoff team with an exciting brand of football, are they winning fans in DFW? Like, are they changing the complexion of the state, or is it too early to have that conversation?
Well, I think that the optics, and because Jerry is so overpowering of a personality, marketing-wise, that everybody's going to assume, Dallas, and even you heard, I think it was Parsons said it, we're still the team in Texas. No, You're actually not. You're not you may be the team in Texas because all the money and Jerry Jones, the billionaire, but you're not, and the Super Bowl rings, you're not the best team in Texas. That I can guarantee you. And if they played 10 times with the current roster, Dallas ain't winning one of them with Dak Prescott at quarterback right now. The Dallas Cowboys, aside from the fact they don't tackle, block, run, play call, make enough plays, they don't have enough players, they didn't do enough in the offseason, all that and the culture. Aside from that, they're pretty good. But they don't do – what do they do great? I'm not talking about individually as a group. Nothing. They've got Parsons and they've got CeeDee Lamb. They're not very good. So, and I got a lot of respect for him. And I love Jerry Jones. But Jerry Jones would have fired Jerry Jones, the GM, 15 times over the last 20 years. And as long as the ego and pride are there, it's going to be hard for Jerry to expand this team because he thinks that he actually probably should be the GM executive of the year. And they're in their own way and they can't get out of it. But yes, the state. There was a poll question by a local television station last week, and it's absurd. But here's how it's the thought process by little brother and big brother, right? That's how the state thinks, right? When it comes to Cowboys and Texans, what's more important, beating the Dallas Cowboys or winning a Super Bowl? Now, I want you to understand that that's what the question was in Houston last week. And I laughed at it, but I said, well, we know what it is. But all week long, we kicked the Cowboys' ass, even though they're not good. And we knew that it should have been an ass whooping. Dallas hung around for a minute, but that's the way they think here. So culture change here, no doubt. DeMeco Ryans has brought a winning personality. And even at 7-4, they haven't played their best football. They can waltz into any team when they're rolling. They just got to get better on first, second down and win. But the Dallas Cowboys are 5 players away from being 5 players away.
Yeah.
They honestly are. And I mean, you look at that roster, Ted, you tell me where you think, a kicker is their offensive MVP. He is, and he's damn good. CeeDee Lamb, Zach Martin, and Micah Parsons. Now I want you to tell me on that team who scares you and what they do better than any team that's going to make the playoffs. Or the top 15 teams. What do the Cowboys do better as a unit than all those other teams? Nothing. And Jerry Cooper's and why wouldn't you play Trey Lance? I know who Cooper Rush is, and God bless him, and he's solid. But I got to find out if Trey Lance can win me a game or two. And if you're the Cowboys right now, you might prefer a higher pick. And if you win and get in draft purgatory, your host, the Cowboy culture, don't let them kid you. I don't believe the Dallas Cowboys players even think they're a good team. I really don't.
No, but if the guys in the locker room know if somebody can play quarterback, Sal,
yes,
if Trey Lance is that bad and he's going to throw coffin balls and get people hurt. I mean, you can't put him out there regardless of what Jerry gave up for him.
There's no doubt. And the truth, and it wasn't a high risk going and getting him from San Francisco anyway.
Right.
And he may be out of the league in 2 years. I don't know. My point is, I think if you're a Cowboy fan, you're saying, well, we do know Cooper rushes, but you're right. If you want to know, listen to the way the guys in the locker room are talking about Danny Jones.
Right.
Daniel Jones is they're even though he's not played well and they're not playing well, they still say he's the best quarterback.
Because they know.
They're damn right they know. They watch practice and are in the meetings every day. So there's a reason, but the Cowboys are going to be hard-pressed to win any game the rest of the year. They're not very good at all.
Last one I have for you, and I didn't want to overplay the Cowboys. You have one player with his podcast having to go out and defend his comments about how the coach hasn't worked hard or some shit. And then after this game, you've got your best player, two of your best players filming a music video in a club after you get dragged by the Texans. And I really don't care how players spend their off time. Everybody's different.
Agreed.
I know nothing good happens at the club at 2 a.m., especially on a weeknight. But Sal's, I mean, the optics of it, the optics of everything is falling down around you and you guys are out there doing this. It just, it's going to show up online and it's going to be a talking point on radio. Why do you want your teammates to have to answer questions about whether or not the locker room's lost and are you guys still committed? And do you see what CD was out there doing? It's just, that's the part of it where it's like, you've got to look at this and say, I've got a whole off season to go to Turks and Caicos and film music videos and do all this shit. Let's finish this off and not make our jobs more difficult by our personal choices. That's the part of that decision that I don't like.
You mentioned winning culture. You mentioned it. And this is a team that, won 12 games last year?
Yeah.
And had, Dak was second in the MVP voting. Well, that right there is the answer. I think they've mailed it in. I don't mean they're not playing hard. You're supposed to play hard every week. But I think you get to a point where it's, here we go again. And you're exactly right. Does being in a club on a Tuesday or a Monday night after a game mean you're going to not play well the next week? No, that doesn't mean anything. They used to do that with Romo. Remember when Tony Romo tried to qualify for a year or would play golf in March? And then in September throws an interception. You know what fan base said? Oh, shit. If he wouldn't have played golf in March, he wouldn't have thrown that pick, which is just absurd and dumb. But during the week of a game, yes, there's something. It's that feeling, and you don't want to, I don't give a shit what anybody else thinks, but there is some time when it comes to your teammates and comes to the optics of the organization that you at least fool us that you care. And so even if you want to dance around and you're celebrating and getting and drinking at home, but just, don't do it in front of the crowd because even people that are partying with you know what their first thought is? These guys don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They don't care. And then the first mistake the next game, what do you think? And especially if it's by somebody who's see, they don't care. It is the optics and trying to see through it. But you're just giving fodder for every show and all of us to talk about. When you're bad, sometimes you just got to work in silence and do your thing in silence and then hit the offseason and try to do it again. Optics, whether you believe that they matter or not, there's a reason people talk about this because the optics for Dallas are you're getting your ass kicked. And right now, it doesn't matter. And that's not the case because I'm sure Zach Martin and Micah Parsons do care. I'm sure they do. But the look for everybody that does it, it's just like, see, look at and think about how they talk about Mike Tomlin's team and think about how you're talking about it. I know one's winning and one isn't. But think about how you're talking about this team. Or take another 3 or 4 win team and say, well, at least they're, we don't see all the theatrics that are going on and, even saying, well, Joe Mixon was okay on his podcast and we're still the team in Texas. All those things that keep coming about, and they're a 3-win team that can't beat me and you. So optics do matter. And right now the Cowboys, and I got a lot of respect for them and players, and I know how hard it is to win. They make it easy to criticize because they invited. And at no time in the history of football will we ever see a Super Bowl champion where the head coach is where the owner is the face of the organization. Yeah. Never going to happen, man. You got to find a different face of the organization, and then you sign paychecks and let those guys do their thing.
Completely agree. I know that having Sean Salisbury on the show makes us look better. 1999 Bobby Double L. Thank you so much. Nothing better than shooting Sal's on this fine Thursday. Sir, I will not see you before Thanksgiving. Know that for a portion of what I am thankful for on Thanksgiving is having you involved in anything that I do broadcasting. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you and your family have a blessed Thanksgiving.
A couple decades with you and I doing this, brother, and I love you, man, and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours as well. Always appreciate your great listeners and fans, and I'm grateful to be a small part of it. Thanks, man.
Thank you, bud. Always the best. Give your family my best. Thank you so much. The great Sean Salisbury, everybody. Pleased to be going to X and thanking him for coming on the show. Trust me, he doesn't have to do it. He is a busy, busy man, and he makes time each and every week. And I have not been the easiest to work for, what with all my firings and canceling. So thank you to him. John Salisbury came on the second I started up my new show and said, I don't give a fuck what everyone's saying. I know who you are. I'm coming on your show. And that means a lot to me. So thank you to him for being a part of this show and every show that he is. Bobby Double L, thank you so much for the $20 super chat. I do greatly appreciate you. Friend knows, again, if you are watching this on YouTube, thumbs up, but also please, if you do have time, and look, I get it, you got shit on your mind. My issues are my issues. They are not your issues. But if you did feel generous, head on over to iTunes, head on over to Spotify. There's a link at the bottom of the page. Subscribe. Leave a 5-star review. We're actually starting to make a little money off this show, which is absolutely fantastic. I want to give a verbal nod to Josh Stroka for helping me out with that. But signing up for the podcast is a great way for you to help us out, and I would certainly appreciate it. Just to dovetail, I know we talked about this on the Chad Duke show today, but I wanted to bring it up here to dovetail on what I was just talking about with Sal's, with the Cowboys, and with the decisions. For those of you that didn't see the video, I'm not going to play it here. It's a tiny little clip. It's annoying. Trayvon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb, after they get blown out by the Houston Texans in their own building, they are now winless in their own building. Their record is embarrassing. Yada, yada, yada. We're talking 34-10, you're 3-7. They decided to film a music video. I'm guessing they had this scheduled out for a while. They had the cinematographer booked, the space reserved, what the fuck ever. I don't have a problem with athletes wanting to be musicians. I don't have a problem with musicians wanting to be athletes. It seems to have always been. He brought up the Tony Romo trying to qualify for the U.S. Open. Why aren't you studying the playbook? These guys are not robots. They have their own lives. I'm talking about the optics of making things more difficult for your teammates inside the locker room. That's what I have a problem with. And with Micah Parsons having a podcast that causes a fucking kerfluffle every 2 weeks, I don't think it fucking helps. I also think it shows that you're out for you and not for your team, which is fine. These guys have a finite amount of time. They're sacrificing their bodies. They'll get cut when they get injured. I mean, this is a business. But it is what it is. You're a part of the ultimate team sport or you're not, and this is the ultimate team sport. So to go out and do that, it's going to get brought up and it's going to be viewed negatively. James Jones was on FS1. He hosts a show. There's 100 shows over there. And he's on a show with a bunch of other athletes, and he was talking about what he does or what he did after losses and his reaction to these two Dallas Cowboys superstars deciding to film a music video after they got run by the Houston Texans. I wanted to respond to this just a little bit.
We lose, I'm to the crib, dog. Like, I ain't got nothing to talk about. Don't nobody really call me. Y'all watched it. You know what I'm saying? What you calling me for? It's a bad game. We got smacked. It is what it is, right? I'm to the crib. A lot of my teammates would go to the club and chill and do that. And they would come to practice and be some of the hardest working dudes at practice, right? So I'm never worried about what you're doing with your off the field life and how you handling a loss or a win or whatever.
I'm going to go ahead and say I have a problem with that. Not that I have a problem with it, but I disagree with his opinion. Part of what you're talking about in your off-the-field decisions can ultimately lead to guys getting taken off the field, right? How many different suspensions for Adam Pac-Man Jones over his career? How many times the guys very rarely run into problems sitting at home after a loss? Now, you want to talk about domestic violence and yada, yada, yada. I'm sure it happens. But usually, where do you run into the issues? You run into the issues where you're Mike Vick and you're out at the club and you're not even doing anything wrong, but there's a shooting at the club that you're at and whose name is in the headlines the next day. I remember covering that story on The Fan. So while personally I wouldn't judge a teammate that likes to go out to the club, I'm not a club guy, so it wouldn't even be part of my decision-making process, but I would at least be able to acknowledge, okay, it's not necessarily true that just because you work hard, even though you go out and party on Monday night, it doesn't mean there could be a negative side effect. So that's just, a little bit of a sticking point for me personally.
What you doing with your off the field life and how you handling a loss or a win or whatever. I ain't never worried about that. All I'm worried about is how you coming to work. Mm-hmm. A lot of the best teammates that I played with, some of the all pros, some of the best teams in the locker room, win or lose, they in the club, but they are going to put in dang near more work than me. And
okay, that's fine, and that's a good thing, and I'm glad. My wife, if she has a couple of drinks at night, she's going to wake up with a headache. If I have a couple of drinks tonight, I'm going to wake up and feel absolutely the same. People handle hanging out differently. That's not the issue that we're talking about here. Nobody faults adults for going out and enjoying themselves and blowing off steam. You lost horrifically. You're amidst one of the most chaotic seasons that the Dallas Cowboys have had in years, and that's saying something. You're two superstar players. You're going to cause consternation surrounding the organization. Now, maybe you don't care about that, but then you don't care about that. Maybe your argument is, well, who causes more consternation around this than the owner? Okay, you're right. But control what you can control. I can only control myself. I can't change anyone else. I can only change myself. I'm playing devil's advocate here.
And from that standpoint, I'm not tripping. So I don't care about where you're doing. All I care about when you step in this facilities, are you putting in that work? Now, CeeDee Lamb's teammates, Trayvon Diggs' teammates, if you ain't handling your business at practice and you ain't giving it 110, then this is a problem in the locker room. But to me, I ain't really worried about none of that.
Well, I mean, then which is it? What are we alleging here? Like, I think if you believe it could be a problem with your teammates, that's something you take into account. Like, are my teammates going to look at me differently? Or am I doing everything that I need to do? I'm not going to question CeeDee Lamb's effort or his production this year. He's the one bright spot on that team. But Diggs is a guy that a couple of weeks ago was screaming at a reporter outside the locker room that had already gone into the locker room after a loss, read a tweet that came out during the game, and then already beat cheeks out the side door, out to the media scrum to scream at the guy who he knew said the shit, telling him to grab his nuts. It was hilarious, if I'm being very honest. But the Cowboys ain't my fucking team. You already have one of these guys involved in some of this stupid shit. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't know how. I would have to have it worked into the contract of the player. If we're going to give you $150 million, you got to do your podcast in the off season. I can't have you doing it during the regular season, interviewing guys on the team, interviewing guys on the other team. I realize this is the free agency era. They're all friends. They're going to collude. They're going to decide. I mean, the NBA kind of spearheaded this. It's following and matriculating its way into other aspects of sport. No podcasts, no music videos. Come the fuck on. If you can write it into guys' contracts, hey, I don't want you riding Sea-Doos during the season. I want you playing flag football during the season. Let's fucking get the podcast started the second the season's over. And by the way, for the Dallas Cowboys, shit's going to be over as soon as the regular season is done ski. I don't care that CeeDee Lamb wants to film a music video with Trayvon Diggs. And believe it or not, I don't care about that at all. But I care about what it then is other people in the locker room are going to be asked. I don't care that Micah Parsons doesn't think that his head coach works that hard. He can have that opinion. Keep it to your fucking self. Tell the guy next to you in the locker room that you could trust. Fuck, man. You've got the world coming down around you if you're the Dallas Cowboys. It goes along with having that star on the side of the helmet. Don't give them more ammunition. And it sucks, too, because, like, the last thing in the world you want to do if you like talking football is talk about the shit that's going on with the Jets, the shit that's going on with the Cowboys, because it ain't the football part of it. This is the NBA part of it. NBA sells more drama than it does actual discussion about the game itself. Their offseason actually does better than their regular season. So it's par for the course. Horrible game tonight. Really bummed out by it. If you missed the beginning portion of the show, I don't know. We live in an era where you can flex games. You can move games off of one network onto another network. Look, Thursday Night Football, I stand for it. I defend it. A lot of people, it's real easy to sit there and shit all over Thursday Night Football. Thursday Night Football gave us that epic shootout between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson a few weeks back. Absolutely fantastic entertainment. If you're a football fan, you loved it. So that's not what I'm doing here. But what I am doing here is acknowledging what is. And what is the Cleveland Browns are 2-8. and they are a gong show, and they are not a fun 2-8. A fun 2-8 would be a team that can go out there and score 28 points but going to give up 35. Like, yes, please put them on where everybody can see them. They're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight. Pittsburgh's 4-1 on the road. They're 8-2. Now, they're on a short week. Shit can happen. Browns beat the Ravens this year. So, I get it. It's the NFL. There's parity. But here's the part that I don't get. The Cleveland Browns have 4 primetime games in the next 6 weeks, including tonight against the Steelers. Now, the Steelers, unfortunately, for those of you that hate the Yinzers, are a story by themselves. Them going out here and figuring out a way to get to 9-2, staying in the conversation for the 1 seed. That's interesting. Russell Wilson going out there and continuing to incorporate his new weapons, continuing to throw moon balls. Like, that's interesting. But the Browns visiting the Broncos on Monday Night Football next week is not interesting. In week 16, the Browns and Bengals on Thursday night, Joe Burrow aside, is not interesting to me. The following week, Dolphins, Browns on, wait for it, Sunday Night Football. That has to be flexed, right? No? Has to be flexed. I'm reading this here. The deadline for flexing Browns Bengals is today. Today. Are they going to flex it the same day that the Browns are playing football tonight? Are they going to dare do that? Florio actually brought that point up. I know sometimes we don't care for Florio's take on football and question whether or not he still even enjoys it, but I think it's a fair point. Hey, folks, we know the Browns shouldn't be on Thursday Night Football in 4 weeks, so they won't be, but please watch them tonight. Yeah, that makes sense. That take makes sense to me. But fuck all. This is a television-driven sport. All right, I got to tie things up. I apologize. It's going to be a little short today. I've got to go make sure that today's episode of the Chad Duke Show is knocked out. If you haven't subscribed to that, I think you dig it. We talk football. It's fun. There's some dick jokes. ChadDukeShow.com for more information on that. Appreciate Sean Salisbury for being here. Thank you to Bobby Double L for the super chat. And hopefully you guys spend the rest of this afternoon up until Thursday Night Football staying as far away from you can as anything short and over the middle. It's time to go long, real long.
Hey, what do you got?
Both types of sports.
Yeah, what's it do? Go long. Real long.